Welcome back. We are following breaking news, a verdict in the landmark case addressing the power and influence of social media. A Los Angeles jury today finding Meta and YouTube negligent in the design or operation of their platforms and saying the companies failed to warn users of the dangers of their services. The jurors found that the tech giant's platforms harmed a young user with features that made her addicted and led to mental health problems. The trial, which included testimony from Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, was the first lawsuit of its kind to go to trial. In separate statements, Meta and Google, YouTube's parent company, saying they disagree with today's verdict and plan to appeal. Today's verdict comes just one day after a jury in New Mexico ordered Meta to pay $375 million after determining that Meta concealed what it knew about child sexual exploitation on its platform. Meta says it plans to appeal that verdict as well. Joining me now is Jacob Ward, veteran technology journalist and host of the Rip Current podcast. He's also the author of The Loop, How Technology is Creating a World Without Choice and How to Fight Back. Jacob, thanks so much for joining me. So let's talk about today's big verdict. What was your big takeaway?
Well, Kristen, this is really, I mean, for me, it is I get goosebumps as I say it. It is truly a historic moment. I really think that this is on a par with figuring out that cigarettes cause cancer or that we needed to have seatbelts in cars. This is a huge societal shift that we're seeing unfolding in front of us really in real time. And as a result, you know, I think this is the end of social media as we know it, and it is definitely the end of childhood as we have come to accept it. We are seeing for the very first time a social media company found liable, in this case, two of them found liable for the design choices they made and for, as a result, addicting kids in a harmful way to their product. This is something that was unimaginable even a few years ago because these companies have enjoyed such powerful legal protections until now. Now this new legal theory opens up an entirely new can of worms, one that consists of more than 1,600 cases that are now going to come down on one or more of these companies, Kristen.
Wow. Well, it's really striking to hear you describe it in that context, Jacob. So paint a picture for me. You say this is the end of social media as we know it. What does that look like in our society?
Well, until now, right, we've treated our attention and, by extension, our behavior as, first of all, something that you and I are supposed to be entirely in control of ourselves, right? We've been sort of the opinion that somehow the choices you and I make are totally our own and can't really be shaped by anybody. But then, of course, what we saw was the rise of an industry that has made its business analyzing and shaping behavior at scale wherever possible. And this is not to say that they had nefarious ideas in mind. They just had discovered that our attention is an incredibly profitable product to traffic in. And so in this case, we're just looking at now a jury that, you know, even a few years ago might not have been able to wrap their minds around the idea that we can have this kind of harm by the design of a platform. That was such an abstract concept. As someone who tries to articulate that concept as often as I do, you know, I've spent years trying to get people to understand even the idea that there are armies of experts inside these companies working on that kind of idea. And now suddenly you have a jury of our peers suddenly understanding that, it seems, and as a result, finding these two companies liable. So this could absolutely rewrite the rules. Now, will that be a rewriting of the rules that everyone will be happy with? I don't think so, right? We have enormous First Amendment issues that are going to come up with this. And you know that Meta and YouTube are going to fight tooth and nail because this is an existential threat to the way they do business. So this is not over by any stretch, but I think that the era of treating our behavior as an infinite product to mine, that era is over, I think.
It's just really powerful to hear you talk about it in those terms. You talk about the profits. Let's talk about the profits of these companies. Meta is worth more than $1 trillion. YouTube is worth more than $500 billion. Its parent company, Alphabet Inc., is worth more than $3 trillion. Could these companies just absorb the cost and keep doing business, find a way to keep doing business as usual?
I mean, when we look, Kristen, at the individual judgments here, right, you're looking at a $375 million judgment in New Mexico, and that's a slightly different issue. It is a different issue than the one that was settled in L.A., but both of them sort of surround the idea that there is harm being done and a responsibility on the part of the companies. In both of those cases, right, you're looking at numbers that really are a rounding error in the balance sheets of these companies, of course, right? The $3 million judgment for this one plaintiff in L.A., no way. But you look at the 350 other family cases coming down the pipeline. You look at the 200, those alone, if you use this math, 3 million per plaintiff, that ends up being in the billions, right? Or at least over $1 billion. If you look at the math of the school districts, 250 of which are lined up to file suit, and you think about thousands of students per school district, you're suddenly getting to some very large numbers. And so whether these companies can afford this in a dollars and cents way, I think we'll figure that out. Time will tell. But the incentive, which they did not face before now, is to change the way they do business because there is suddenly liability. In the United States, Kristen, we don't make a lot of changes to how companies do business, or companies don't make a change unless there's financial harm. This was an industry so enormous that we couldn't have imagined doing enough financial harm to make it possible for them to even consider changing. Now those incentives are shifting in a way that we haven't seen, I would say, since the era of big tobacco, since the era of lead paint, right? These are enormous kinds of judgments that have to come through for a company to consider changing how they do business. And so I just think that we're probably, even though we're going to see endless appeal, this is not by any means settled in court, I think that it is for the first time operating at a scale that really touches these companies in a very new way.
Look, before I let you go, I do have to shift gears. I want to show you this sort of extraordinary scene at the White House today. An AI-powered robot escorted First Lady Melania Trump into a summit on technology and education and opened the summit, Jacob, by actually speaking. It's kind of out of a movie. What were your thoughts when you saw this? What do we take from this moment? What are the implications?
I cannot believe that I'm speaking to you on the same day that a jury of 12 people, decided we needed to protect kids in this whole new way, established this entirely new idea of harm. And at the same time, you've got this imagery going on. I mean, we have the reason we're seeing these court cases move forward is because at the federal level, no one's been willing to make the kinds of laws that democracy has clearly been clamoring for. When I spoke to the Attorney General in the New Mexico case, he said, I don't want to have to do this court case by court case, but because we're not getting federal action, we have to. And when you see, I honestly don't know, Kristen, but I assume that's Elon Musk's robot, right? When you see the pro-tech cabal that is in the White House now, and the ways in which they are trying to just open the floodgates for that industry, and you compare that to how the first, this jury of our peers has enacted the first real sort of democratic input into what everyday Americans want to see from these sorts of companies. The contrast between these two things could not be starker, Kristen.
All right, Jacob Ward, thank you so much for your insights today. We really appreciate it. Good to see you as always.
Thanks, Kristen.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.